We're now entering the we're now entering the awards portion of our program. This year's Veteran of the Year award is presented to Governor Tom Corbett, who embarked on his journey of service to our country 39 years ago. Please watch.
40 years ago, at this point in time, I was in basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, as a member of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard Headquarters Company, 28th Infantry Division, 28th Aviation Battalion. And I spent a number of years first as an enlisted man. When I moved to Texas, I joined the Texas Air National Guard. Upon graduation from law school, went back into the Army Guard, and then received my commission and went from the Aviation Battalion to the Staff Judge Advocate Section of the 28th Infantry Division Headquarters. I knew I wanted to serve my country. I had to serve my country, and I was more than willing to. A friend of mine suggested the National Guard. I looked into it, and I'll tell you what, I'm very pleased that I did it. Next to meeting my wife and marrying my wife, it's the best thing that happened to me. And it gives me the ability, it gave me the ability, continues to give me the ability to understand what our national defense is like, understand what guardsmen do for the federal government and also for the state government. As a guardsman, 1972, we had Hurricane Agnes hit all of Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania, where I was living at the time. We were certainly hit there, and ironically, this year we had Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee come in and provide as much or more flooding in certain areas than Hurricane Agnes did. The ability of the guardsmen who served not only the federal government but served the state to have state duties, which we used them this time. We were used quite a bit back in 1972. In fact, this was the first mobilization for state duty since 1972. Is one that I will always remember. But it was a time that was much different. This was just at the conclusion of the Vietnam War, and then moving on then. It was, the National Guard was not used nearly as much then as we are today. We trained for being deployed to Germany in case of a war with the Soviet Union. Now today our National Guardsmen are part of the whole active Army and are used around the world. Well, I think the first thing I learned was discipline. Basic training, if you don't come out of basic training with discipline, there's something wrong. I had some discipline before that, but I learned I could do anything even if I didn't want to do it. And I think that's an important thing to do. It helped build a work ethic that has carried with me throughout my entire career, and a discipline that has carried with me throughout my entire career. My leadership style is basically a military-type leadership style where you have to be able to delegate, you have to choose subordinates who work with you and who can do the job, who you can trust in their decision-making process. I ultimately have to make the final decision. I take a great deal of input from them, but once we decide, we move forward. Today, as we talk, I'm wearing the pin of the 28th Infantry Division that was given to me by my Adjutant General, Wesley Craig. I wear it very proudly. I have great pride in the men and women who are serving in this country, whether they're serving here or overseas. Great empathy for the families of those who serve, and particularly for the families of those who have lost their lives. There are many lessons that you learn besides what I talked about with discipline and organization, but I think the number one lesson is you're there for your country, you're there for your state, and you're there for the people of both, and we are to serve. Many times you hear people say this, and I do it every time I see a first responder, whether police officer, fireman, EMT, or a soldier. Airman, Marine, sailor, thank you for your service, because it is service to the country. You're not getting rich in this, at least not financially. You may be getting rich emotionally. You may be getting rich in what you get back from what you put in, but they are serving our country.
It is my distinct honor to present the 2011 Veteran of the Year Award to Governor Tom Corbett.
To VLP, thank you very much for this honor. But let me start off with this. I don't deserve something like this. I served during a period of time that was much different than many of you served in, and many of our children are serving in today, or our colleagues. I am humbled by this. It's an emotional time. I don't know about you all, but watching and listening to the camaraderie, to the teasing, to thinking about we can poke fun at the Navy or the Coast Guard, but do not let one enemy do that to any one of our branches, where we will come together and we will defend each other and this country. So it's been an emotional night here for me, sitting here listening to this, and to the people who are coming behind me, who really are the veterans that deserve something like this, and to the many people who did not come back, who deserve this. It's ironic that today we have one come back. Major Thomas Clark returned to Pennsylvania today. A major in the Air Force who was shot down 40 years ago. His body has been recovered, finally, from Southeast Asia. And he's been returned home. He landed, I believe, at the airport here in Pittsburgh today. As the Marines did in the battle that Ken Carlson, and I will talk about him for one moment in a second, as the Marines did then, they didn't leave their wounded and dead behind. We continue to look for those who have been missing in action, or who were there. And this should be a very somber but happy day when you know that we've returned one who has been gone for so long. Decades of searching in the jungles of Southeast Asia. He's going to be buried in Emporium in Cameron County. He'll return to the soil of the state of Pennsylvania, the land that he defended, and we will have the honor of his eternal rest here. Because the men and the women, as we know, on the front lines, do not start the wars. Politicians start the wars. But we leave it today to the historians to debate the meaning of the wars. Rather, like Major Clark, our airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Navy, sailors, soldiers, and Marines, we answer the call. They do their best, and they keep faith with their oath to defend this country, to defend the Constitution. It's humbling to be standing here as governor, and General, thank you for the comment of being commander-in-chief. As a guardsman who started out as an enlisted man in 1971, literally I was at basic training, I think, in the evening watching the Pirates in the 1971 World Series. Oh, that we could do that again today. But to be able to represent our state in a completely different position, and to work with the fine men and women of the Pennsylvania Army and Air National Guard and all the first responders. You saw pictures that were taken from Hurricane Agnes and from Hurricanes Irene and Tropical Storm Lee. And some of those pictures, I'm going to look to my staff that I actually take some of those pictures. I had a chance to get up in the Black Hawk, fly in a Black Hawk. Having gone from the aviation battalion, I love flying in helicopters. I took some of the pictures to see what we did as a state coming together to respond for our citizens who were devastated by forces of nature. It is a privilege for me to be able to serve them. It is a privilege for me to be able to serve all of you. And it is humbling what you have done here today. Thank you. I salute you, and have a good evening.